It's all downhill from here, folks. Hey, Crystal Maiden here. And some interesting bit of trivia for you is that they didn't produce nearly enough cartridges of Zelda 2 to satisfy demand. And so there were these really long lines to get the game. And some people even had to drive over state for it. It's kind of surreal thinking about how wanted the game was back when it first came out, because there was such a small supply of it for some reason. I'm not really sure whether or not Nintendo intentionally did that as a marketing scheme to bring more attention to the game. Like, I have faith that Nintendo wouldn't do that, but it sounds like something logical to do. This part of the dungeon forces you to use this berry spell, wasting 2.5 boxes of your magic meter. Isn't that swell? Yeah, and Medusa heads over Disintegrating Bridge. Wonderful. That's not cheap at all. But if you're skilled enough, you can get past it without dying. And I sort of consider this to be an iconic room of this dungeon. Like, you've got the bot producers on the ceiling, and you've got a whole bunch of areas on the floor where there's 2 blocks piled on top of one another, and there's red dark nuts and bots, and a completely flat floor. That's pretty iconic of the game. I hate these enemies. I think they're fire Wizrobes, although they look nothing like the Wizrobes in the rest of the game. And they're just really cheap and annoying to deal with because they don't die in one hit. They teleport all over the place, so that you try to hit them and then they teleport away. And again, you don't kill them in one hit no matter what. Well, maybe if you have full attack power, but and they send their fire out in front of them too. That's another annoying thing. Some more trivia is that Miyamoto, he doesn't really think any of the games he produced were bad per se. And he produced Sticker Star. But anyways, he just thinks that maybe his least favorite game produced was Zelda 2, because there were so many things that he wanted to do with the game that he couldn't because of the limitations of the Famicom. Like, he wanted to be able to give you more. He wanted to be able to give you bigger enemies to fight, like it was Shadow of the Colossus or something. But he couldn't do that because of limitations of the NES. I mean, the biggest enemy you fight is, well, you'll see it later. But it's the only instance of an enemy that big ever occurring. And he also regretted the fact that there were so long load times on the Famicom version of the game. Because again, you go to another area, like a town, or going from outdoors to indoors, and there's a black screen with the white text "wait" on the screen, and you have to wait for it to load. It's a good thing that this game's on a cartridge everywhere else, because it reduces the amount of load times. Yeah, an experience bag at this point in the game is pretty worthless, so I don't think it was worth wasting a jump spell just to get it. I haven't really talked much about the soundtrack of this game. I hate the Blue Dark Knight, as always. But anyways, I think that the soundtrack of this game is, as a whole, better than in Zelda 1. Like, I like the title screen theme a lot more. It's a lot more memorable to me. It's all about setting out on a new adventure, and I like that. And then everyone knows about the Great Temple theme, right? I mean, that theme is epic. And it's one of those themes that it loses a lot of its original feeling when it goes from the original 8-bit chiptunes to actual instruments. Like, it was put into Brawl, or was it Smash 4? I can't quite remember. Anyways, it was put into a Smash Brothers game, and I actually had a dream years ago that that exact tune was remixed in a Smash Brothers game. But it sounded a lot better in my dream. Like, it had a choir going on to give it a mystical feel, and and yet it still maintained the epicness and the dreadful ominous that it had. But the remix of the Great Temple in Brawl, it tries really hard to go for a mystical temple theme, and completely sucks all of the tension out of the song. Like, you hear it and you really don't think final dungeon of the game. Yeah, having to fight this guy in such a narrow corridor is cheap. But I like the Great Temple theme a lot. Like, it's pretty cool. But while I was playing the Great Temple, pretty soon I ended up muting the volume because it does its job of giving you a feeling of ominousness. It does its job of feeling dread a little too well, because I was hearing it and it was really emphasizing how difficult the dungeon was. So I eventually muted it. But it's a very good song. And look at the top of the screen. It's weird how it does that. Is that exclusive to the Virtual Console version, or did the NES version do that too? Because that never happened on the Game Boy Advance port. It's like the top of the screen was moving around for some reason. And it's a good thing that doesn't eventually crash the game. And yeah, I stopped to grind bubbles here. Might as well, since I'm almost about to level up. It's usually when I'm almost about to level up that I'm a lot more motivated to fight enemies. But anyways, I like the regular dungeon theme. Like, it's pretty good. I also like Melee's remix of it in the temple level. And even though it has a completely different feeling from the original, I still like the Melee version of it a lot. Because when I was a kid, you have to understand that Super Smash Bros. Melee was one of my first video games ever, along with Super Mario World and A Link to the Past on the Super Nintendo, and Wind Waker. Though Smash Bros. Melee was one of the first games I ever played, so it makes sense that I have a lot of attachment to it and anything associated with it. So I guess it's because of nostalgia that I like its version of the temple theme more. And then there's the battle music. The battle music is different between versions of the game. The Japanese version of the battle music is definitely a lot more suited to a battle type area. It's a lot more frantic and stuff. And it was actually remixed in Minish Cap to be the mini-boss theme. I was really shocked when I found that out, because I played that game for such a long time, and I never knew that mini-boss theme was unoriginal. I think the main problem with the Japanese battle theme is that there's not enough to it, Oh, Castlevania again. Yeah, that's not cheap at all. This is one of the worst rooms in the game, if not the worst. Because with the handy glove, you can break the blocks forming the bridge. And that means if you try and attack the enemies that are attacking you, and use a downward thrust or something, you'll end up breaking the bridge and falling into the lava. Not to mention it's a narrow corridor with dark nuts you're expected to fight. And there's flying fish everywhere, and you can't be expected to hit the flying fish and attack the dark nuts at the same time. And it's so easy to do a downward strike by accident when you're trying to crouch stab and you're trying to jump in a very narrow corridor. And don't you just hate it when dungeons lead you to dead ends and waste your time? Like, I thought there wasn't an intangible wall there, so I was just led to that blue dark nut for nothing, with no reward at all. Now, other Zelda games would have rupees in them, and so that you at least get some sort of reward for getting to that dead end. But that's a weird thing I haven't mentioned yet. Zelda 2 doesn't have any rupees at all. It's the only Zelda game, as far as I'm aware, to do that. I mean, I don't know if some of the more obscure CDI games didn't have rupees, but I think this game would have been a little more interesting if you could buy stuff. Like, maybe buy bombs so you could break open cracks and find experience bags and stuff. But I don't know. I mean, you've got the A button for a jump, and you got the B button for a sword attack, which it will stay as for most of Zelda franchise. And the NES only has 2 buttons, so it's kind of got its hands full. It can't really have items in the traditional sense. I mean, it had to map the spells to the select button. And isn't that awkward? I mean, the spells are basically the items of this game, and they're relegated to the select button. Well, it's better than the jump being on the select button. That would be extremely awful. Can you imagine? Anyways, the battle music that we usually hear is pretty good. I like it. It's not just because of nostalgia, it's because there's a lot to it. Like, the battle music of the Japanese version it doesn't have enough to it. It's too short and it loops too quickly. So it gets repetitive really quickly. That's his biggest problem. But if there was more to it, it could be awesome. Yeah, fuck that section. I always skip it, although it's a lot trickier than I made it look. Because sometimes the monsters that appear in the overworld don't like to go exactly where you want them to go. It can be kind of finicky getting them to do what you want. And every section like this is basically the same. There's these red Lizalfos that you can't attack, throwing boulders at you. I don't know if you can reach them with the last spell in the game. I guess it would make it easier, but again, the last spell uses up so much magic and it only attacks the enemies on the screen you're currently on. It doesn't destroy all of the enemies in the battle area. So it would be a waste of magic, let's just put it that way. I just hate that section so much, and you have to go through it twice in a row at least. And that's not the only time you'll be going through it either. Since, again, when you die, you start all the way back at the North Castle, and you will die. Even if you don't lose all your lives, then you're probably going to lose all your lives intentionally or save and quit, because you probably won't have enough lives to get to the Great Temple after beating this next dungeon. Play the flute here, and you'll get the next temple to appear. But the annoying thing is, it doesn't always stay there. You have to play the flute again if you want it to appear again. Oh, well, it stayed there after that, but if you enter a cave, then it'll despawn. And if you go into the temple, and you leave it, then you'll have to play the flute again to make it spawn in again. Yeah, as you can see, if you thought East Hyrule was bad, Southeast Hyrule is even worse. Although, at least it doesn't have nearly as many of those stupid enemies that force you to use a fire spell to attack them. Hey, you know what I really like about Zelda 2? They don't have rooms that absolutely force you to fight enemies. I mean, you'd have a pretty hard time fighting the bosses in a pacifist run, but for the most part, you don't really... In fact, there are experience bags, so it's not completely mandatory to attack enemies to gain levels. And there's automatic level ups after beating the bosses. So, what I'm trying to say is that this is the rare Zelda game where you're not really locked into rooms and forced to fight all of the enemies to get out of it. Which Zelda 1 did a lot. But this game doesn't do that. So, even if there are a lot of difficult enemies, you can avoid them. Press A and use your hammer on the trees, and you can actually reveal this hidden village. How are you supposed to know that? I mean, I guess I appreciate the fact that the whole you can cut down trees with a hammer somehow thing is actually useful in the game instead of just being an Easter egg and nothing else, because that would be wasted development time. But it still seems really obtuse. I mean, you're told that the town is located in the east. I mean, you're told that this town is in the east in the woods, but you're never told how to get it. You're never at any point told that you can use the hammer to cut down trees. But anyways, I love this village. the people here are so willing to help you, and I like the way the village looks. Although I hate empty houses that waste your time. Anyways, I guess it's kind of annoying how the color of the buildings is too similar to the color of the grass. I don't really like that. But the people are so willing to help you. I mean, you didn't have to complete any side quests at all to get that woman to give you the magic container. And you don't have to do anything at all to get access to the spell other than just talk to the NPC walking in front of the house. Basically, this is the town that was built after their previous town was overrun by monsters and ghosts. But wait, are the ghosts just monsters from the graveyard who happen to live in the graveyard for some reason? Or are the ghosts actually the ghosts of the people who were killed from the monster raid? I mean, that's pretty fucking dark. Because we're never exactly told if it's the monsters, if it's the ghosts moving around in the ghost town that drove everyone away, or if it was entirely different monsters altogether, and that the ghosts we see are just the dead souls of the people who were killed. I mean, how did all these villagers survive such an attack? None of them look like they have any swords or anything to defend themselves. And how did they manage to survive the way here? I mean, there's a lot of difficult enemies to fight on the way here. Use the spell here. Use spell here, which is a really stupid and lazy name, by the way, and you'll get the magic key. And the cool thing is that this magic key, or skeleton key I think it's called, it gives you infinite no, it gives you infinite keys. It's just like the magic key in Zelda 1. You're never going to see an item concept like this again, by the way. No other Zelda game does this. And I guess it can be forgiven that they have magic keys in the NES Zelda games because the puzzles are pretty simple. And the magic key in Zelda 2 just saves you time. Because you're not solving difficult puzzles to get keys, unless platforming challenges count. And most of the time, I mean, look, you were jumping upstairs there, alright? That's the definition of a dull platforming challenge. This game isn't really about the platforming. I mean, the platforming is basically either really simple or really cheap. I hate those scorpions, by the way. Like, you can't attack them when their eyes are closed, and they love to have their eyes closed. And you can't just perpetually downward thrust on them, because it's not inevitable that they'll open their eyes. It's completely random. No, it's not. You have no idea when they're gonna open their eyes, and they shoot fire at you too. That's really annoying. See you for the next part.